There we go. Oh, good there. Let's check one other thing. Get moving. Press that. That works. Oh, good evening, everyone. We're going to work on some of the stuff that we were working on 2 weeks ago. I should say try and finish up some of the stuff. Well, that looks like that's actually where we want to be camera-wise. This is kind of the wonders of filling some of this stuff with epoxy. Because now you got to go back and be all right if you could get it. If things show up before you turn it or start to turn it, much easier. But things always don't go the way they're supposed to, or let's say probably rarely go the way they're supposed to. How does this thing get twisted up so bad? So this was a piece from the other week that we were working on. We will need dust collection, so we're going to put up a little bit of noise. So this is the epoxy fill. It's filled. It was actually filled from this side. So the white stuff on the outside is hot glue, which was the dam that I created. We're going to start out pretty coarse. It's actually a piece of 100 grit. So we'll see whether it does what I want it to do, which it should. The epoxy is not real hard to sand off. It's more the fact of the hot glue that's still left behind. I didn't get all of course. It's probably going to clog up my sandpaper. Yeah, so I got to get my little rubber stick. Of course, we might actually end up going through a fair amount of sandpaper at this rate. But once we get rid of the hot glue, the rest of it will come off fairly easily, I think. I should grab a little chisel, might help. Just to get rid of some of the extra. Sanding it makes it heat up, so it becomes very gummy. I already got rid of most of the big clumps before we even got started. I can see we're gonna liquidate a few pieces of sandpaper. That's all in the name of progress, I guess. Maybe we'll just go back to 80. See if that'll cut through it quicker. Problem always lies when you're using super coarse sandpaper is that then we're left with those super deep scratches. So that's cutting it off pretty quick, but it's also doing a very good job on the sandpaper in a very big hurry. We're getting there. Another one bites the dust. Don't get too carried away with that situation there. That's clogged up another piece of that, so which is fine. We're going to go through quite a few pieces of sandpaper to get this situation accomplished. Now with the 120, just to try and get rid of some of these really big scratches. Because inevitably we're going to flip this around and actually do the inside first, because it also has epoxy in there. Because this thing is nowhere near centered, so I can't spin it. I don't think I can. I can get it relatively like right there. Might not be too bad. Then I could actually stand and finish some of this. We'll see. It's not bad at all. It still has dark areas around it. And that's the epoxy that has soaked into the wood in those areas. I think. Because it's got the bluish color to it. So I'll just sand a little bit more. And see if we can get the whole thing blended together. As you can see, it's peeling it off pretty quickly. Good sandpaper. Okay, now I think we'll just progress through the grits, see what it does. I have to do a little work on my foot eventually, because I'm getting the hot glue off. I nicked the foot up a bit. So that was 150. Small jump to 180. And we'll just sort of proceed along. 240. Not very exciting stuff to watch, but it's all part of the process. I think that piece of 320 has seen its better days. Okay. On the 400. Still plenty of scratches in the epoxy, but I think I have a fix for that, I hope. We'll see before we go too far. This might be a piece that actually gets sprayed with lacquer rather than the typical super glue finish that I normally would do, just because of the epoxy. If I remember correctly, epoxy and super glues do not necessarily get along. It would be nice if they did, because that would fill that in, but we can answer that question before we go really go any further. It's kind of weird that the epoxies don't get along with super glue, because I can use this. This is a 3460. This is the one that has the availability to do multiple coats. We'll see what it does. Just a little bit. I'm thinking it didn't, if I remember correctly, I don't think it wanted this to set up. No, not really. So I think this piece is going to be a lacquer finish. I'll just go back and hit that a little bit. If I don't even have to do that. And jump to 600. That's 600. So that piece of 600 might be. We'll see whether it cuts. Some of these sandpapers are actually hard to tell whether it's shot or not. Oh, thank you. So that'll be all right, I guess. Somehow or another, my volume got turned down on my headset. That's 100%. Oh. All right. So I think that's all I'm going to do to that side. I think. Flip it around. We'll do kind of a rinse and repeat on the inside. The inside will be easier. That's where I filled from. Or no, it's where I didn't fill from. So it's inside is it's a little it's rough, but it's not gonna be like I'm grinding a ton of material away. So get back to the big jaws. It's the tenant that's on the back. Hopefully it grabs it good enough because it's, like I say, I messed it up a bit. And I might as well keep that out because we're going to need that again. It'll certainly hold it well enough to sand. As you can see, here's more of the epoxy. So that's where we're going to start. I think I'm going to leave the harder pad on to do it. And we'll go back. We'll just go back to 120. It should peel that off with 120, I think. Let's sort of get it down a little closer to the area that we need. Oh, there was even a little place I should have filled. probably clogging that up. Yep. Piece was getting dull anyhow. I think I got another one out. Yep. It seems like that's got it pretty close to where we need to be. And some tape residue. I want to fill that crack. Let's take that out for a second. Go back overhead. Find the crack. Do just the opposite of what everybody tells you to do, and we'll pour the spray the accelerator in the crack. That way when the super glue hits the bottom of it, gets in the crack and goes to the bottom, it will cure from the bottom up. That way me taking a little bit off of the surface in here will not have it flying all over the place. I have it running all over the place before too long, but I won't have it flying at me. We'll just sort of leave that as a clear, just a clear crack fill. I have a piece of hackberry that I'm going to work on next, and that's probably going to be a sort of the same type of scenario. You probably can't see it on the camera, but it's wrinkling up at the top. So it's setting up as it goes. We didn't need to be sloppy and get it everywhere else, but it's already set up. You can always give it the extra spray to verify, but it should be good. Now we can go back to our sanding. There, we'll go back to there. And we got to go forward. Well, this looks like there's a tiny little bit of a void in that epoxy or something in there. I think I'm also going to switch to my softer pad from there. This thing has moved a little bit in the 2 weeks' time, so it makes it a little easier if you have a little bit of cushion. looking for the giant size scratches from the 120. We still didn't get all that off. Okay. That was 150. I think that 150 is pretty well shot. I think we're just going to get a bunch of new ones here. Sandpaper certainly don't last forever. It's not like it necessarily breaks the bank. Yeah, 150 is definitely a shot. I just went one grit higher, 180, and you see the amount of dust that's coming off of it quickly. It's all good. So, 240. Keep my edge nice and soft. I'll take the peak. There's kind of a little dimple in the epoxy, but I'm just going to leave that alone. The lacquer will actually start to fill that back up. Reason that white line on the rim here. It'll be all good, I think. 400. I'm getting them. So now the real question, I'm going to use lacquer, which is where we're going with this, I think. I think it'll look better because it'll fill in, there's teeny tiny little, there's scratches in that epoxy. So if you get something to fill that in, why it'll make it nicer. So if I'm going to do a lacquer finish or a film finish of any kind, really, when it comes right down to it, my first coat is going to be shellac. So I'll put the shellac on the inside and I'll sit this off to dry for a while. And then we'll flip it around and yeah, I think so. What I use is Zinsser Seal Coat. Yeah, we'll see here in a minute because that's one of the wonders of using the shellac on things. Is it's going to show me what it's going to look like. It's going to add a little bit of color to it and bring out the character in it. Not necessarily a paper towel kind of a thing, but it'll work. It'll bring it to life. Just sort of have the shellac, you got to keep moving, keep it moving. Try to put a nice light coat on. Get it rubbed in good. Of course, since there's alcohol in there, it will also raise the grain somewhat. So, like a lot of the other stuff I may use, just like the super glue finish that I normally would use on stuff, that's going to sit here for a little while, and then we'll flip it around, and probably, what time is it? It's 5:45, so give it about an hour, maybe, something like that, and then we will back overhead. Yeah, this is not as pretty as the one that I did 2 weeks ago, the smaller one, but it's got plenty of character to it. And of course, there's still scratches in the epoxy. I'm not really worried about that because the rest of it, once you get some, once they spray a couple coats of lacquer on there, it should fill them in and make it crystal clear and shiny, as it normally does. Put it that way. On to the next science project. This is going to be a night of mostly science projects again. It's one of those things when you're working with, the free wet wood, there's quite often you end up with some cracks and all that good stuff in it, but it's just I look at it as a design opportunity. That's what I would call it, as long as they don't get too bad. And it's just designer firewood. And I need this. The next piece is a piece of hackberry. And for whatever reason, as you'll see in a minute here, it decided to crack in some kind of a weird place. It's a natural edge. It is sort of a crotch, so there is um, some stripes in there. Flip it over, there's a lot more of the stripes. This dark streak has cracks in it. And those cracks, I think, actually went pretty much the whole way through, I think. So we're going to true up the outside, where we're going to start. Try and take this is one of them situations where we're going to try and take the minimal amount of material away. just to get it back into the round. Try and get it back to where it was originally. Looks like it. I don't know. You can see by the ghost image on there, it's pretty far out around, which is not uncommon, of course. If I remember right, I think I have more of this down in my stash. I was kind of surprised I didn't have more of it. I sort of unloaded the bags of all the stuff. If you've watched me before, I put it in a paper bag, put it on a shelf. Well, I had other stuff that I needed to put on the shelf, and there was no room. So that means we had to look at most of the stuff, and actually everything on the shelf was ready to be pulled out of the bag. Oh, this is that one. This is going to be a pain. This is the part you don't want it to happen, but it's loose, so don't take a chance because it'll hit you hard. And of course, the real problem is going to be is right there. That half of it came off, but the other half did not, which is always a problem. Probably just wait till I get it thinned down, and then we'll see where we go from there. Maybe we can get the crab legs free. Yeah, it's always nice if it stays on, but I think there's more times than not it doesn't stay on. Still gives a neat look, but as far as turning wise, it's never a fun time to get your fingers whacked by a piece of bark because it does hurt quite nicely. But it still gives us a nice wavy edge and that whole scenario there. And as I try and stress to my people that I teach at Woodcraft is always make sure you spin it before you turn it on. You're not going to be able to turn it very fast, I'm sure. Although, surprisingly enough, it's not too bad. Up around 800 RPMs, that's not a bad day. As I look down on the piece, I can see, and you really can't see it. I can't see it on my monitor. You can see there's a ghost image underneath there. At least I can see it in my perspective, and I'm fairly tall, so when I look straight down, I can see the ghost image, and as I look behind it, there's still a little bit there, but not much. I can see it disappearing. So we'll just take nice light cut. Started out with a pretty decent shape, so you really don't have to reshape anything, I don't think. It's just a matter of getting it back into roundness. Or at least semi-round. Once again, I'm not totally worried that at this point that I get it totally round because I have lots of these little fissure type cracks that I'm going to have to do something with. Don't really plan on opening them up any further than what they are, if that's where they're going to be at. So we're around, just about to the round. Oh, no, not quite there. We'll get some of this out of balance off of it. And still plenty far out around right there. We'll try and get the rest of the way out. See if we can squeak out a couple hundred RPMs or something. Now that there's no bark, I don't need to worry about running off the top edge either. There's nothing up there for it to tear off, so we know we're filling things, so there's still a uneven spot. We didn't get quite to the rim either. So probably another little light pass or so. We got most of the outside out of balance away, so I'm able to get a little bit more speed out of it. They're up to about 940 RPMs, if anybody really cares. It will make it easier to cut, make it a little bit quicker, a little bit more efficient. If you look up on top, well, no, there's still feels like there's a flat. So a little bit right there. The part you need to be concerned about, and that, I mean, we're going to fill them, but some of these I know go the whole way through. So if we were to say, well, we could leave the cracks and turn things complete, like on the inside as well. These cracks do come up along here. They could actually go the whole way up to, or they are almost up to the top and down into here. So this thing could actually fly apart if we went down, if we went to a thinner wall once we get up that far. So I'm looking back and forth at the top profile. That's usually where you can see that it's not round. It still interrupts things in that circle up there. And I think I remember this from turning this stuff originally, that it must have some silica in it or something or other, because it's taking the edge off the tool rather rapidly, which it shouldn't. I'll switch to a sharp gouge. Hopefully we can get this outside complete. And then we'll go sharpen things up. Make sure we get the whole way off the end this time, which we did. And I don't see any dull spots. So that means we've gotten it back into round. Certainly could use a little bit more attention down in here and things like that, but that's it's really all well and good. So we're going to true up our tenant, the tenant that already exists, and see what my trusty little dividers say. A fair amount of room to be able to get that trued up and put them into the, we could consider them 3-inch jaws. Switch over to the spindle gouge to do that work. Into the corner. Definitely want this to be flat. Or rather slightly concave towards the center. Take a little bit of that off, knock that corner off. Go back towards the center. That center will sit in between the jaws on that chuck. So it can stay there because we will need that at some point later on. Still have a teeth mark there, so need to take a little bit more off. I don't want it to get a hold of one of them teeth marks. Get rid of sharp edges while I'm there. And now I got it flat instead of a little dovetail. Always works better with a dovetailed chuck. That should work. Okay. So, done with the spindle gouge for the moment. So we'll release this, flip it around. And that's not the right chuck, of course. Tailstock out of the road, live center out of that. Doesn't have a point in, but it's still sharp enough to stick you in the arm or whatever may come in contact with it. And we'll see whether we went too small, which I don't, nope, just right. Actually, for a perfect circle, it could actually be a little bit smaller than that yet. So there was still wiggle room there. So we go over to there. Face shield's getting really dusty. Yeah. So wonders of working with dry wood. Now everything is dusty. As you can see, or can't see, those cracks come the whole way through, right in through there. So this is definitely not going to be a project that we'll be able to totally finish today. So there goes down into there. So what I'm going to do though, I'm going to true this up a little bit. I want to make some cuts down across where these cracks are at. Just sort of to see, kind of like exploratory surgery in a way. We'll see what we have going on in there. And the 40-degree dot should do the trick for that. If we change something, we're going to slow down, and then we'll bring our speed back up to where we get some vibration. Back off just a little bit. So we're getting more and more in balance as we go along. Now the hard part is to find where the edge is at. I would say by the sound of it, that's still not round. Might have to turn the dust collector on. It's really dusty. Actually, that is round, surprisingly. So that actually opens those cracks up a little bit more. Just it's not quite round there yet. So we're going to get to a point very quickly here to where we're going to switch over to a thicker bowl gouge and go to the 5/8 because I'm at the point very directly that it's going to have really too much tool overhang, and it's going to start to squawk and not like what things are doing. This is another one of these. This should only be probably about 4 inches deep. So it's still about 10 3/8. So even at 50% is 5. And that would be the very highest point. So I'm actually just a little bit beyond that 5. It would have been better off to be about 4. Could have got a nicer, sort of a nicer curve. But we didn't quite do that now. See, no, we're good. Because here's where I can hit the camera, but we're actually good, pretty good. It's just a 5/8 inch full gouge, still a Thompson tool. You have to go nice and slow because it's pretty hard stuff. I'm not really totally concerned that I get the whole way to the bottom either. Even at that, I've got a solid 3 inches or better of tool overhang. I'm not quite round down in that area either. I guess I do need to go a little further down. The other thing you could do, we might do, is we could be the Richard Raffin hero, and we'll just pick up a scraper for that last little bit down there. I did one earlier today. And that's exactly what I did with that one too, is just pick up the scraper and get it trued up. It might not like it not being trued up, we'll see. More importantly, we'll see whether it actually is a wood that likes to be scraped. It actually does look like I left a little, well, there's still a little bit of, that's the part that I don't, I'd like to see one of his pieces up close and personal, because to me, it lifts up grain right in that area. Of course, my last cut might not have went from top to bottom either, but neither here nor there. So, another project. Let's go back overhead. As we'll take this out of the chuck and determine which side we're going to fill from. It's a really good question. Sort of looks like that side might be the side to go from. So we'll get some painter's tape, which is enough to stop the super glue. If I was using epoxy or something like that, the epoxy gets really hot. But yeah, I should have left it in the chuck. It'd be easier to hold on to. So we just get that smushed in there good. Looked like there was some of those cracks come down in there and maybe would have popped out in that tenon too. So now we'll cooperate and sit there. Looks like it. Whether you'll be able to see much of it is another story, of course. With a little dental pick action. At least up in this area here. Yeah, that's what we wanted to do. Don't blow into a bowl in your face, you dummy. Because there's all kind of little like strands of fuzzies that sort of go across that. Be like fibers of the wood trying to keep the gap closed. So I can get rid of them. It'll make it a whole lot easier. To do our filling. Yeah, I think that'll work. Should work better anyhow, put it that way. And I don't want to fill them clear either. So we're going to mix up some super glue with mica powder in it. First things first is get your gloves on. And the cracks aren't really, I don't view them as being really big enough to try and get any kind of powdered metal in there. And I know very good and well they're going to be really jagged on the inside there. anyhow. So just Hobby Lobby carbon black, and it is very black. It's a little bit of mica powder. I usually put it in first, and this time we'll use the 3460. We'll put a fair amount in there. Not that I can't mix twice. I actually have way too much mica powder in there. Probably have trouble getting it to dissolve, maybe. That's way too much mica powder. So this is where you're wasting super glue, because I just add more glue to get the powder to dissolve. Not that it totally matters. I mean, I've seen people do this where they put the mica powder down in the crack. I don't know whether you can get away with doing this with the fast setting super glues either. Okay, now that I did that, I'm gonna have to walk over here on the other side of the shop, and I'm gonna spray the accelerator just like I did with the little crack. I'm gonna spray this, but if I do it over there, 9 times out of 10 there'll be a little bit of accelerator gets where I don't want it, namely in the container that I just mixed up, and it would instantly mix that up. Whereas that little jar or cup with whatever might be left over, it takes forever for it when it's that amount of it together to actually set up on its own. Back there. So these little paper Dixie cups, I can make a really nice little simple kind of. That'd be your inexperience. Mica, it's mica, not micro, mica. MICA. You'll find it with um, like casting products to do any of the blank castings with either epoxy or the urethane resins. It's primarily where it's used. I'll sort of do them one at a time. If I wouldn't get my big head in the road, I would show you. As you can, if I come in really close, right there. Not really enough contrast. It doesn't look like this. The first section I just did is already set up. So I'll leave it there. Probably still won't be able to see anything. So if I pour it, and try not to make such a big mess. It's where the popsicle comes into play, is just keep bringing it back over to the groove, the crack. It just keeps disappearing into it. Because ideally we want to fill it the whole way through. Well, that makes two of us. I've just done this for a very long time. I started out making cabinets, period, doing flat work. And then you had one of them situations where decided to make a career change as far as making money, and now all of a sudden you don't have the time to do the woodworking stuff that requires gluing up panels and any of that such things. So there, it's setting up on the surface. There it goes. It kicks off. You can see it. It's sort of when you're doing it in person, you can see it get like kind of crinkly. So that's our big cracks filled from that side. You can also see a little bit. Back off here so I'm not trying to kill somebody. See a little bit snuck out there. We have a paper towel. This is where it counts to do this now rather than that other bowl where we encountered it really too late in the process. Get the super glue off the bed. So it looks like everything is skimmed over on that side. So let's see if we can get a hold of this side. You see, there's some of them didn't come the whole way through. That's perfect. That'll sit right there. For whatever reason, you would have thought they would have. Some of it did because I can see some of the glue in that crack, at least part way down. The other one's these here. There must be some glue got the whole way in through there. Well, yeah. I mean, there's I don't know about the wood turning. There's no money. There's no real money in. Well, some people make money making stuff and selling it. I'm not one of those. I mean, I do a couple craft shows a year with it, make a little bit of, make really what I would consider a little bit of money out of it. Um, where the money is at in something like this is being able to teach it or demonstrate. I can do the teaching part right now because I work a 5-day work week, so I can get away and do that, which I do once a month, which is enough. But that actually pays pretty well. Here's where we're going to make a mess. Just trying to get some to go down into those little itty bitty cracks. I know very good and well that's some of the same ones that's coming out the other side. So if we can get them filled as best as we can. Like I say, this might be one that ends up being, might have to do this more than once. Like I say, they go the whole way through. At least I think they do. No, 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 no. Stay up here where you belong. Like I say, this is where you can really make a good mess. And now I'm back here further than what it needs to be, so we'll just widen out a bit more. And try not to make so much of a big mess. That's why a lot of times, if I can, I'm going to fill something from the inside of the out, because the inside just runs to the middle. Whereas you can see on the outside here, it wants to run every which way but loose. And I'm not really worried about getting the black super glue out in this area either, because like I say, we're going to go back and recut this some more. It'd be aesthetic. It's giving it a color. You can buy some super glue out there that's, I think Starbond has like black and brown. I've tried some of the black, not necessarily in Starbond's kind. Tried some black years ago, and I didn't particularly care for it. It was actually kind of thick in a way, so it really didn't work for this process. I mean, this needs to be fairly thin. You want it to go soaking into the piece, into the crack. Come on, stand up there. Thank you. So being as how this stuff is actually a slow setting, and I will just give it an accelerator shot on that side. That will set it off and firm that up on that side. And this will get set off to the side because we definitely don't want to do anything else to this one tonight. Um, been there, done that a few times. Saying, oh well, I had all that accelerator in there and it should have set up and should have did this and should have did that, and you're cutting along. Next thing you got super glue flying everywhere. So I just let them sit. Could we let this sit for a couple hours? Yeah, probably, but this will sit. This will be next week's project. So hopefully they're all filled. We'll find out next week. On to something else. Yeah, that's kind of an old woodworker's trick to use the very fine sawdust. It's a little bit would be a little bit more cumbersome in the wood turning because you don't necessarily get the. I mean, you could get some, I guess, but and there again, when you start putting regular wood glue on things, then you can get back into the same scenario of adhesion for the finish and things of that nature. So we're going to do another, as you can tell, I like to do natural edge bowls. Um, this is oak. As you can see, there's blue in there. It has an epoxy fill in that one, but it's a very small epoxy fill. Because oak's a wonderful firewood. My grandmother burned a big ton of it in the days when she was alive. Yeah, that's the real issue. It's more chips than it is fine dust. But I mean, you can, if you're vigilant about it, or if I sand it without the dust collector, it would be laying here um, on the bed, and you could probably get enough off of that to fill some small cracks or whatever. And you wouldn't necessarily, you could do the same thing. You could fill those cracks the same way as I just did using the colored mica powder. You could jam some of the wood dust down in there and use a super glue, a real thin super glue, preferably one that has a slower setting time. Somehow or another, I don't have a center mark. So we'll just use our trusty center finder, see what we can find, get close. Like I say, this is a small bowl. This oak I think came from down at my daughter's other house that they had. I think I took this tree down. She's like, "Oh, you should take some of it home." And I think I don't know. I did 6 or 8 of them. They're all about the same size. It wasn't a very big tree, and I think all but like 1 or 2 of these blanks didn't crack. All the rest of them cracked. There's some of them that I think there was 1 or 2 of them that I literally just kind of went for firewood because they cracked that bad. But it is what it is. It should have some nice character to it. There's actually a little crack I missed. Goes the whole way through too. But we can deal with that one. Might need a smaller jam chuck. I want it to go closer to the bottom of the piece than being up here because we know up there is not round at all. So if we use one that's long, yeah. But now it's on the wrong chuck. Jaws will probably go that wide, but I try and stay away from that number. If you get the jaws, especially well, these might not, but the bigger jaws or whatever, you get these little points out beyond the body of the chuck, you're just kind of looking for an accident. It's kind of an accident waiting to happen. Murphy's Law says that if it can happen, sooner or later it will happen. Get rid of that one. It's actually even a little bit big for that. That's just a chunk of hard maple. A little pad on the end. Put my point back in my live center. You can bring that up and then we will be pretty well centered. Should be pretty well centered. This thing has moved quite a bit, so it's definitely not going to be real well centered. First order of business is going to be to go over here and sharpen our 2 gouges. Dig the other one out of the sawdust. A handle there, so I remember to do that. Let's go over to the grinder and put a fresh edge back on them. Because I do remember that with that hackberry that there's something in it that makes it, and they tell me generally it's some sort of silica, but the wood is already sort of white, so you won't see the white streaks of the silica. Just know when the tool hits it, it like instantly dulls it. It's not a gradual thing. It goes from sharp to dull very quickly. So that should be that. Remember to switch scenes back to move along. Yeah, I've seen people. There was an older gentleman, he's actually from Georgia. Um, he literally took his chuck jaws and took them over to the grinder and rounded these corners over on the grinder. And I'm like, Well, that sounds like a wonderful idea, but now you made now you added. You can't tell me you were good enough on the grinder to grind that amount of material off of there without throwing that thing out of balance. Because I would think that they're at least the better chucks are pretty well balanced. And I'm like, when he showed at that time, I'm like, that's not something I would do. I don't think. So once again, we're back in between centers, nice and slow, off to the side. It's one of the things I stress to the people is staying to the side, bring it up to speed, or at least get it close to the speed, which is much easier in the classroom because they're little jet lays and all the controls are on the right side. So I don't know what I was thinking on this one. It looks like I was thinking that was going to be a foot maybe. So we're just trying to get some sort of a place. That still isn't true there. That's sort of a cut that I do not try and teach these people. It's not a clean cut. It's sort of a pull cut, so to speak. But if I drop the handle far enough, I can actually have the bevel behind it. Right now it's not trued up yet, so it also can be pretty aggressive as far as the amount of material it wants to remove at one time. So according to my finger, not a great thing to do either. And we're about to there. Some nice torn up grain there. This thing does have some nice little, I think they consider them ray flecks in it. So it might actually look like something when we're done. If we come back and do our bevel supported cut, should clean that up. And take our time on that one. And then we'll proceed on up to the rim. At least we'll get part way there. Keep everything together. It's still not round right there. At least when I touch the tool to it, it's not. Doesn't seem like it is. Well, it is, but another crack. Nothing else. This is a good practice for tool control. There's the epoxy coming through right there. There's another little crack right there. Somebody's still always trying to sell you something. There's actually the remains of a, or at least I hope it's remains of one. It looks like a vermin hole. There's the other end of it too. Don't look like anybody's home. Just a little bit of what remained, I guess. Also have a lump right there. And a crack. Crack there I'm not going to get too excited about. So let's see where that's at up there. Okay, can we get to the big one? Not till we get way up there. I think that would be in the realm of a little bit too big, but this certainly can be the foot. Can leave this section as a foot for it. It's too thick. But we can deal with that. I think. I like to think out loud. If you can't tell. We're gonna have to pull this off in a minute here. That crack, I think I can feel it on the inside. I don't know how I missed that when I was filling stuff. So now we've taken the majority of the yucky, the really out of balance stuff out off of the outside. So now I'm able to bring the speed up more where I want it to be, especially for a natural edge piece. Fully off the end we go. And so now I have a nice clean cut top to bottom with a crack. Again, epoxy filled crack from the other side. This is all good. So let's see. So that should be about the right size for the small chuck. So we just need to make it nicely dovetailed into the corner. Come back over this way. Come back in. And we'll leave that like that. This section here will become our foot. Do you believe? It's actually probably a little bit big for that chuck, but that's okay. It'll work. It'll make the center hole a little bit bigger because that's not super duper small. I think where we're at, since this is going to be our foot, come down here and sneak into that corner, drop the handle, and make this into a little bit of a bead. Gently caress the surface. And that gives us a little bit of a bead. A little bit of sanding on the top of the bead and it'll be fine. Make it nice and round. So we messed up the bottom shape. I'm going to go the wrong way, so to speak, there. Hopefully it doesn't come back to bite me too hard. If it does, we'll just use a scraper and scrape it a little bit. Yep, it didn't do nothing to me, which is wonderful. Could use a scraper or something to straighten that up a little bit. If I flip it around this way, I'm looking across, I'm looking at this curve, and I want it to be a nice flowing curve. The whole way in there, which it appears to be pretty good. Another thing we can look at is make sure that's not quite undercut. This needs to have a bit of undercut to it. So if the jaws sit flat, no undercut means that the jaws would not sit flat, which would be a rather bit of a problem. So this other scraper will let me go right into that corner. Gently come around there and come out a little ways. And that I should have cut very cleanly. Should have. Oak's hard enough that it did. There's a little bit of a blemish white spot there. So if it's not quite what I wanted, you can always flip it up on its side. And just gently come up across there. And then that should have taken care of that. Now, of course, we're going to have to figure out what's going on with those. With that crack. I hate to say it, but it looks like it's going to be another pain in the you know what. I can see it, you can see it, it's right there. Oh, what pain. Hold it up to light. I can't necessarily see light through it, but I know very good and well it goes the whole way through. Right there. Even though it starts up here, it's probably running down and down slower on that side. Actually, there's another one. That one doesn't go the whole way through. What a pain. All the wonders of using free wood, so to speak. I wouldn't really have it any other way. I think it's more fun. It's more challenging. It's less dusty because what they provide for my class over there is kiln dried wood, and it is dusty as all get out. Harder to cut, dusty. So that's that crack. That's that crack. So if we can get it to cooperate, maybe. This one will just fill with clear. Once again, accelerator down the crack. Here's the only time you ever see me spray accelerator really up close and personal. It does me sort of two things right here. When the glue hits that surface, it'll immediately start to accelerate out in this area, so it doesn't go sinking down into the grain. Even though this piece will get finished with the super glue anyhow, so it really doesn't make a whole lot of difference. But if we were using the colored stuff, if we were using a color, then it's going to stop that from bleeding through. So I just go right smack in the middle of that crack, sort of fill it till it comes to the surface. You can't see it, well, it sinks in a little bit further. But it's also, as it does that, it generally is setting up as well in there. So this is, like I said before, this is the time to fill this stuff in, because there's nothing stopping us from taking another cut, just a small cut or something like that, or even using the scraper and scrape that off before we flip this around to do the inside, which once again is not going to be today. Today is more about just getting them filled in. It looks like that one is full. Looks like. This one won't take as much. It's not a very big crack. At least it appears that it's not a very big crack. This particular one has about a 50-second time delay. It's not going to give me that kind of time delay because of the accelerator in there. This is already set. A little bubble there. It wasn't set. So that's that. Now I'd like to find something else to do. Wasn't part of that plan. It did go the whole way through. Right there is some of the super glue where I didn't have it taped down quite as tight. It came the whole way through that crack. So that's a crack that's totally filled inside to out, which is the ideal way for it to be. So has it been long enough? I'd like to finish this beach one. I don't think I was able to show you. You really can't see it in this light. It is this epoxy fill is semi-transparent. Not quite. I would have liked to have actually had a little bit less on it. That should be, it's been close to an hour or so. Challenge with these gloves is getting them back off your hands. They sweat right away. So this will take a minute or two. Oh, I think I have a couple in there. Just to give you an idea of what happens with the super glues. I can't speak for other brands or something like that, but this is still the super glue that I filled the black in with earlier, half an hour ago maybe. It is still liquid. It has not set up in the cup. It requires to have some moisture to set up. And evidently there's not quite enough moisture in my shop to start to make it set up, at least make it set up quickly. Put it that way. No, that's the glue itself that's not setting up. And the mica powder, the powdered color like that, the mica powder, that's pretty much the only thing you can use in super glue. I've tried some of the color dyes, and evidently there's enough moisture in it or something. It will immediately set that off in the cup, which was kind of surprising to me because it's an aluminum product, and they're um, using that in their product, and their product is not like moisture at all. But yet their colorant has something in it like that doesn't like the super glue, which is generally moisture. But so what we're gonna do, get rid of the tape. We don't need that. I'm gonna set up and do. I'll pull a vacuum on this, aka vacuum chuck. This is a manufactured vacuum chuck. It doesn't have to be a manufactured one. You can make these out of PVC. I just had one of them weak moments, and I was at a show, and these are nice. There's no question about it, but they're also like everything else. They're not free. They're not cheap. So now, in order to get it centered back up, we're actually going to put it back onto the chuck. Would have made sense if I would have done this first, probably. But we'll get it done. This will center it up, back up. That'll sit there, yes. It helps if I got it around the right place. So I'm going to grab a hold of the tenant that was originally on there, remove the live center. Now chuck with the adapter, it's just a number 2 Morris taper adapter is really what it's for, and has the 1¼ threads. Then I can push that up against my vacuum chuck, a little bit of pressure. I don't think we're going to do any cutting. I can get it back out. Try and get everything out of the road that could cause me aggravation. So of course this won't spin at this rate because this doesn't have a bearing on it. So if I turn the vacuum on, vacuum pump, it should pull a full vacuum for my area, which is about 26 pounds of mercury. Then I can release the chuck, pull it back out of the road, take this stuff off because we're done with that. And just for some safety measure, I can bring the tailstock back up with a little wooden block with a piece of leather on it. It just puts just a little bit of pressure because now we can spin it, and it should spin pretty true. Is it going to spin exactly true? Usually not. But all I really want to be able to do is come down in, maybe this would make more sense. Yeah, let's do it that way. I want to come back down in this little area where I did some little dings and things of that nature there, just to be able to clean up that area, and we'll remove the tailstock and actually finish cleaning up everything in there. basically strictly a kind of like a sanding routine. Just going to give me a simple way to sand it. There's actually another one over there on the bench that we can do as well. We're going to sand by hand. We're going to sand nice and slow, 500-600 RPMs. If I use my sandpaper, this sandpaper is little squares. If I fold it in half and be a little bit careful how I fold it, I get a nice, clean, crisp edge in there. I can lay my hand on the live center because it doesn't rotate. Making noise, but it doesn't rotate. So then I can lay that sandpaper right over that edge and get right down into that crack, that groove. Was saying, let's have a little dust collection just for the sake of not sucking so much dust in. I can resand those edges. And I also don't think I got the whole way into the edge. I know I didn't with this sander. So I'll just sand that last little bit by hand into that corner. And I started at 180, and we will go the whole way through our grits, right up to about 400. This is going to get lacquered, so it doesn't need to be, this actually doesn't need to be quite as smooth as what it would be if I'm going to use the super glue, because the lacquer is going to fill in the scratches. And at some point we'll have to cut it back anyhow. So I'll work mainly on this edge out here first. And then we'll do the center part last. I should have stopped and looked to see whether I got rid of all my. Yeah, this will just have a tiny little elevated foot, as you can see. That's just enough to lift it up off the table. It'll give it a nicer look, nicer appearance. It'll sort of look like it's floating on the table. So that's right through to 400. Release the tailstock. I think I sanded that in there, but we're going to give it a little bit more. We'll go back to like 320. Just so that we're sure. I left a mark in the middle where that piece of leather was up against it anyhow. Make sure I get up into that corner. And once again, a little bit of 400. And that should be it. The other thing you can do, or is a good idea to do, put it that way. We stopped at 400, so if we went up one more grit, 600, we can take and do little random orbit circles in and around, especially around this foot area. So now we've broken up all the uniformity of the scratches that could be there. We'll do the same thing on the outside here with this. A lot of times I do the whole piece this way. It just breaks up any of the any of the scratch patterns that might still exist. Because the shinier your finish becomes, the more the scratches show. And this will get a gloss lacquer. So we can get rid of dust white noise. And we're going to put shellac on it so I can actually use a little bit of denatured alcohol on it, clean it up good. It'll just save me a little bit of aggravate, little bit of work with the dust. It won't be in the shellac quite as quick. Since the other side is sealed, the shellac doesn't necessarily. Eh, let that dry a couple seconds while I go get the shellac for one. I normally don't pull any kind of a vacuum on a piece and then turn on and put any kind of finish or anything like that. Especially my super glue finish. It's what you call learn the hard way. So I just bring a little bit of pressure up there and turn the vacuum pump off. Because a vacuum is really kind of a neat thing, but it also can be a troublesome thing that if I was to pull a vacuum and use my super thin super glue, it can actually go find a place where the grain is running maybe at a little bit of an angle through there, or the tubes run through at an angle, and you can stick it fast to a vacuum chuck. And yes, that is experience talking about that. I did it once. That's all it took though. Once I never went back and was dumb enough to try it again. Lesson learned. At least it wasn't the vacuum chuck that cost a lot of money. That was a piece of PVC pipe, which I still have. I still use them from time to time. Um, but it just like, well, this one has little rubber, or yeah, they're like rubberized feet. That has the blue material on it. I think it had the blue material on it. Something like this little guy, this little blue padding on there. Well, till I pulled it off, and I was pretty quick about it. I pulled it off. It had already, because I accelerated it. There again, I hit it with just a little bit of accelerator so I could keep moving. And when I pulled it off, it tugged when I pulled it off, and I knew I was in trouble at that point. But quickly grabbed a hold of that rubber, and literally took a piece of it and pulled it down into the grain, which of course it stayed there, nevertheless. This is just a piece of polyester material. It's a good material to use to put on a wipe-on type finish. This piece is a little bit on the small side, but works well. Doesn't leave any lint behind. Not necessarily worried about getting the whole way to the center at this point, because I still didn't put the type of wood and my initials on there, so I need to do that before I put any finish over top of it. Nice light coat. You can see it soaks in quite quickly, especially on something like this. This is sort of soft and porous. The shellac will stick to about anything, so I'm assuming it's going to stick well to this epoxy. It should. I think given the right light on this, it is semi-transparent in that blue epoxy. Not totally transparent, but semi-transparent, which is actually usually a good selling point. I had some of these, one of the very first craft shows that I went to, I had one that had did this too, with the epoxy filling like that. I'm going to go around one more time. Probably shouldn't, but shellac sands pretty quick and easy, so I don't necessarily, not concerned about it being a little messy. Because that'll be the next step tomorrow or some other day this week or something, maybe other evening, depending on whether work life cooperates. But we'll sand it a little bit, and then I sort of have semi-professional spray equipment to spray something like this with lacquer. And it is a water-based lacquer. It's not the toxic stuff that would stink up the whole neighborhood or something. This is a waterborne product. Once again, just like our paper towels with any of the other stuff on, I just lay it over the edge of the trash can so that it dries without the risk of something being combustible. So this night didn't necessarily come out the way we wanted it to, but let's see if I can get the light behind it once. So you can see that it is semi-transparent. There's enough light behind it, it will show that it's clear and you can see through it. Almost looks like there's some tiny little micro bubbles in there that maybe didn't come out, but won't really be able to tell that. Get the shellac off of there. So if we wanted to, since we do have it still centered, we could spin it. We could spin it nice and slow. It'll help it to air dry a little bit. Yeah, it's much better if it's up on the one that I had. This one's not going to show it unless it, and well, my tablecloths for um, craft show are black, so it really won't show through it. But the one that I had was a bowl, and it was up in the top part of it. And the craft show that we were at was actually outside, and at that point of the day, there was a little bit of sun. It was early in the morning, so the sun was coming in through the side of the booth a little bit and just shined right straight through the epoxy and looked pretty neat. I mean, I was kind of impressed, and that it turned out the way that it did, and the look that it gave it, but it also made it sell very quickly. So carefully touch it. All I want to do is get it off so I can lay it down. And I can go back overhead. You can see more of what it looks like. Kind of the only downfall of these trucks. There we go. It can get on there quite tight sometimes. But I think that's going to be it for tonight. Um, I did start a little bit early tonight because I have some other things. Got to get some stuff, some of my food cooked for the week, mainly lunches. So it wasn't a, I don't know, wasn't a super productive kind of night, but got some got some things done. Well, I'm glad to hear that. Like I say, we're generally here every Saturday. Well, 3 out of 4 Saturdays a month. One Saturday I teach classes that day and do not get home in time and definitely don't have enough energy to come down here and screw around with other stuff. But other than that, we're going to call it a night. And thanks for joining and chatting along. And I'm glad I'm helpful to somebody, put it that way. Other than that, we are going to stop the stream. Somehow or another, this YouTube one used to be able to end it right here. Can't seem to do that anymore. Now, YouTube, technically my weekend is over. I work Sunday through Thursday, so yeah, my weekend is done. I got to go back to the grind tomorrow. For about 5 more months, and then we're going to retire. And then I'll be able to do this all the time. So, till next week, y'all have fun. If you're watching on YouTube and you haven't subscribed, please do so. It'll help me out sometime, someday. But until then, have a good week.